Hi, this is Jenny Langley, author of the new Maudsley Training Manual. In this video, we're looking at exercise 7.1.3, which is a couple of tools for planning for change, so smart planning and solution-focused questions. And we can use those with carers thinking about their own responses and how they might change them, but also when our loved ones are ready to make their own changes, you can still use these exact same techniques. So let's just think quickly about SMART goals. So you'll be familiar with specific, measurable, achievable, realistic within a time frame. So having goals that are maybe mini goals rather than great big goals that are unlikely to work too well first time. So measurable, you can break things down into small time slots. So rather than saying I'm going to get back all my hobbies, I might spend 5 minutes today and 6 minutes tomorrow reading my book, just having a bit of quiet time. Achievable, well, if you can visualize and verbalize how you're going to do an experiment, then it's much more likely to work. Realistic, so just thinking about the details, so similar to achievable, but making sure that within the time frame you're setting, that the goal is actually realistic to actually achieve, and then in a time frame. So when are we going to review how this is going? Is it next week? Is it next month? Is it tomorrow? Something like that. And then solution-focused questioning is a really powerful way, again, to really dig down into visualising and verbalising the sorts of changes that you might want to make and things that might get in the way. So we've got a list of solution-focused questions here, starting with what specifically would you like to be different and going all the way through to what would you do if you got off track. So let's look at a couple of examples. So imagine a carer decides that she wants to get back some of her hobbies. So very often carers feel that they're 24 hours a day looking after their loved one with eating disorder, but it's time to get some of the hobbies back. Now, getting my hobbies back is too big a goal. So maybe I could have a SMART goal, a specific goal, which is to go to yoga once a week. So looking at these questions, what specifically would I like to be different? I'd like to go to yoga once a week. What specifically could I do to get started? Well, if I put it in the diary, so make sure those 2 hours are sacrosanct in the diary. So half an hour to get there, an hour to be there, half an hour to get back. If the first step's successful, then what? Maybe I could go twice a week. Who could help me with this? Maybe my husband. What could I ask my husband for? Well, he would need to take over for those 2 hours when I'm out of the house. What would be signs that things are going well? Well, I actually go to the yoga class and I allow myself to enjoy it. I'm not racked with fear and guilt that something's going to go wrong while I'm out of the house. How would you know if you're off track? Well, either not getting there or somehow not allowing myself to enjoy it or something else happening. What obstacles do you foresee? Well, a crisis just before I leave the house, or maybe me panicking once I've left the house that the household will fall apart. How could I address these obstacles? Well, I'd have to consider what the crisis is and decide. I need to prepare myself that change is difficult. I'm going to feel anxious about leaving my husband in charge. It's the first time he's been left in charge. What would you do if you got off track? Well, I could talk to my husband about what's going wrong. Was it something outside my control or inside my control or outside both of our control? Was it maybe too big a target? Could we make it more realistic? So within this model, there's no such thing as failure because we can plan experiments till the cows come home, but we can't guarantee that they're going to turn out as we predict. So if an experiment doesn't quite go according to plan, then we reframe failure as FAIL, the acronym being first attempt in learning. So what can we learn from this? What went well? Of course, even thinking about the change and making the plan is a huge step forward. What didn't go so well and what might we do differently next time? So let's consider a possible outcome. So I go to yoga and I get a call after 10 minutes from my son who's 12 years old. He's in floods of tears, dad's gone to the driving range, so I go home. So is that a success or a failure? Well, there's no such thing as failure, so what can we learn? Let's assume Sam convinced his dad that everything was fine, he was happy playing on the Xbox, and it was absolutely fine for his dad to pop out for half an hour to the driving range. So we don't want to be, saying this is completely dad's fault. It really isn't. So what's gone wrong? Well, really it was about the communication. So you know the expression, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So what could we do differently? Well, really specific planning can always help with behavioural experiments. So I would take the responsibility here to say, well, I didn't properly explain to dad. This was new for dad and I didn't properly explain to him that he needed to be there every minute while I was out of the house, at least for this first time. And very often dads have a different role, don't they? So mum might feel like she's the house slave or the pincushion, dad might feel like he's the financial provider and that's it. So, and be frustrated about that. So it's really useful to kind of maybe have some of these discussions. So one family said recently that their daughter would really manipulate dad to kind of change the rules. So we agreed to say to each other, well, I'm just going to check what, dad would say, I'm just going to check what mum says, and mum would say, I'm just going to check what dad says. So they would be working together. And then they set up a WhatsApp conversation that before dad got home in the evening, mum might say, don't mention this or do mention this, just so that it would kind of calm the waters and there wouldn't be any unexpected kind of hiccups and that sort of thing. So let's think about the next steps for the yoga experiment then. So it didn't quite go according to plan. I came home after 10 minutes and that's okay. So we'll draw a line, think about next steps. We always think about what are our menu of options. So think of as many possibilities as we possibly can. So one option is to try again. So making sure that my husband and my son know what's going to happen, and they know that it's really, really important for me to be getting some of my life back. Talk to my son and husband about the importance of us all having life beyond the eating disorder. There's so much more to life than the eating disorder, and that we need to support each other to do this. Maybe to start with, maybe going out for 2 hours is too big a goal. So maybe next week I could do 15 minutes of online yoga flow 3 mornings a week, and dad agrees to supervise breakfast. So that's a really nice bit of time out for me, having always been supervising breakfast. And then maybe yoga wasn't the right thing to try. Maybe I could just start doing some of my craft work or something like that instead. So really important to know that there's no such thing as failure. You might feel disappointed, of course, but you can always draw a line, start again. Maybe it was too big a goal, or maybe a different goal would be better. Now let's have a quick example of how somebody with an eating disorder might use this approach as well. So let's say the person with the eating disorder, let's call her Millie, would like to reduce her compulsive exercise. So that's not a SMART goal, is it? That's a great big goal. So let's say she agrees a SMART goal specific goal would be to reduce her running by 1 minute a day. And she's going to do that each day this week, and then they're going to reflect on that. So what specifically could she do to get started? Well, she's going to try it from tomorrow. So she'll reduce her run from 2 hours to 1 hour, 59 minutes. If the first step's successful, then what? Well, maybe carry on with the same experiment next week, or maybe increase the challenge slightly. Who could she ask for support? Well, she says, I'm going to ask my dad because he kind of understands about running. So he knows that running isn't just about the eating disorder. I do love running, but it has become compulsive. What could Millie ask dad? Well, dad could check in with her every day to see if she's okay, especially if she's feeling really anxious. So dad could use any of the motivational techniques he's learned to really, really connect with her and notice what's going on for her. What would be signs that things are going well? Well, Millie is reducing her run by 1 minute a day, and she's managing to cope with the inevitable anxiety that triggers. How would she know if it's off track? Well, maybe if she just can't do it, or maybe if she misses a day or two. So what obstacles does she see? So she says, I know my eating disorder voice. So this is where it's useful to be having this conversation with dad up front. I know my eating disorder voice is going to tell me I'm a fat, stupid, useless failure. Or maybe I'm having a bad day and I don't feel I can do it on that day. So having a bad day makes it hard to do experiments, doesn't it? What would you do if you got off track? So not get too upset with myself. So this is a really important learning point, isn't it, for people in recovery? Change is never easy for anyone. So Millie might think, if I have 1 or 2 bad days, that's okay. My dad can help me to reset for the next day. So let's think again, possible outcome. Millie reduces her running by 4 minutes in total in the first week, so 4 out of 7 days. Dad gives her lots of encouragement and affirmations about this wonderful achievement. He encourages Millie to reflect on what happened on the days she didn't manage it, and also on the days she did manage it, so what helped her to manage it. And Millie learns that there are often things outside your control, or you're simply having an off day and that's okay. You can always reset the next day. So Millie, in this instance, might say, okay, so I'm going to try the same experiment next week. And she's got more confidence. Her confidence has gradually risen up by having a partial kind of success of this experiment that they started at the beginning of the week. Okay, so thank you for listening, and I hope you found that helpful.